as they all are. But honestly, he appears to be the selected candidate of choice of Fidel and Raul, those, of course, being the Castro brothers in Cuba. The Castro brothers, and I know this is going to be hard for Americans to believe, have been running Venezuela through Hugo Chavez for the last several years. They make all the important decisions. Chavez is basically just a puppet. He talks and talks, but the main decisions are made by the Castros back in Havana. According to the story, he continues to say, there are 60,000 Cubans inside Venezuela running all of the strategic communications, the intelligence networks, involved in the military down to the platoon level, and they basically have established a continuity of the Cuban control in Venezuela. Basically, the opposition to Chavez and his cronies is not very strong. So whoever comes to power in Venezuela is not going to be good for the United States or for the people of Central America and South America, for that matter, either. The opposition party there is not very well financed. They've lost several elections, but there are a lot of questions about whether those elections were legitimate or not. Hugo Chavez always, at the last minute, has this magic surge in votes, and he ends up winning. Sound familiar? But whether or not the opposition has been able to garner enough votes, the fact is that the rules of the elections have been unfair from the beginning. They have not been fair once in Venezuela since Hugo Chavez came to power. With leftist governments in Venezuela and several other nations in Latin America, the United States has lost much of its influence in the region. The U.S. certainly does not have the influence that we've had in the past. And the reason we've had influence in the past is because we were dealing primarily with Democratic parties. I'm talking about the last 25 years. I'd say the U.S. influence in all-time low in the area, but it's also because the U.S. is not utilizing its influence. The influence, the potential influence, it's there, but the occupiers administration has decided not to use it. Certainly not to use it in the interest of the United States as far as a strategic betterment in the region. The United States under the occupiers administration has reached out to all the leftists. They've slapped the hands away of the democratic governments in the region, like Colombia, Chile, Peru. We've had very few initiatives of any significance with those countries. But at the same time, we've told all these leftist governments to work with them. We're not recognizing that these are not left of center governments, the kind of European socialists, for example, but these are Marxist governments. These are governments that where the leaders, having come to power, begin to dismantle the democracy and the democratic institutions that have existed for decades, beginning with the electoral process itself and the judiciary. Then they come after the freedom of press. They try to control all the civil institutions like labor unions, and they've undermined businesses. Pretty soon they end up, for example, like Morales in Bolivia, and Carnera in Ecuador, or Ortega in Nicaragua. They take control of the country. Why do we allow this to continue to happen, ladies and gentlemen? These are observations from a man who's been on the ground in this country, who was working there before Venezuela fell under the boot of Hugo Chavez. Is it a shocking concept that Raul and Fidel are really calling the shots, especially with Hugo in the hospital room. I might be a little surprised to think of Hugo Chavez as just being a puppet. I mean, the man's boisterous enough and seems to have enough of an ego. I can't imagine him just being somebody's puppet. That's hard. But with his health failing, could all the Cuban assistance to maintain continuity actually be a power grab? Could Cuba be extending its influence further? Well, I think obviously the question there has to be yes. Yes, of course they would take the opportunity if it's available to do that. We're talking about former U.S. Ambassador to Venezuela, Otto Wright. This man has an impeccable record in an understanding Central and South America. This man was one of the last people truly involved in America being a predominant leader in the area. If you can't trust his judgments on this, whose are you going to trust? This man meets the definition of an expert in the field. So is Venezuela under the control of the Castro brothers right now? I don't know. But here's what I do know. The issue about the swearing in, it got settled this past week. But it was settled in a way that I'm sure was very unsatisfactory, shall we say, to a majority of the Venezuelan people and certainly to the opposition party. Because they basically said, we can wait to swear him in until he gets back. Well, that doesn't answer the question of what changes. Has the Constitution been completely thrown out in the nation of Venezuela now? Well, I would say that actually Hugo has been in the process of throwing it out for quite some time now. And I'd say that we're seeing a similar thing play out here in the States. I don't think there's a question that the occupier, Mr. Obama, probably idolizes what Hugo has managed to do over the course of his tenure as Presidente of Venezuela. Do the research yourself. Come to your own conclusions. In the meanwhile, just for fun, let's talk about 18 facts that prove Piers Morgan is lying about gun control. First of all, I don't particularly care much for Piers Morgan, and he's gotten way too much attention recently because of the stand that he's taken. I mean, I doubt seriously that very many people had any clue who this guy was up until recently, unless you're a loyal CNN watcher, which I'm sure most of the folks that listen to this show are not. But, let's just take a quick look at it. One of the things that he likes to keep doing in his arguments is he just points out when the UK's gun ban went into place, just the changes overall in numbers. But let's actually pretend for a second that population was the same. Number one, the UK has approximately 125% more rape victims per 100,000 people each year than the United States. Fact number two, the UK has approximately 133% more assault victims per 100,000 people each year than the United States. Piers Morgan continues to insist that there are more than 11,000 gun murders in the United States every year. Sorry. According to the FBI, there were 8,583 gun murders in 2011. And, the kicker with that is, of those gun murders, 400 were justifiable homicides by law enforcement, and 260 of those were justifiable homicides by private citizens. Interesting. Fact number four, the United States is number one in gun ownership, and yet is only 26th in the world in gun murders per 100,000 people. Fact number five, The violent crime rate in the United States actually fell from 757.7 per 100,000 people in 1992 to a anemic 386.3 per 100,000 people in 2011. During that same time period, the murder rate fell from 9.3 per 100,000 people to a anemic 4.7 per 100,000 people. This was during an era when gun laws in the United States generally were becoming less restrictive. Fact number 6. The city of Chicago has some of the most strict gun laws in the United States. So has it reduced crime? Of course not. The murder rate in Chicago is about 17% higher in 2012 than it was in 2011. And Chicago is now considered to be the deadliest global city. If you can believe it, I know I can. There were about as many murders in Chicago during 2012 as there was in the entire nation of Japan. Fact number 7. The city of Kennesaw, Georgia, passed a law requiring every home to have a gun. The crime rate dropped by more than 50% over the course of the next 23 years. Fact number 8. Approximately 200,000 women in the United States use guns to protect themselves from sexual crime every single year. Fact number 9. Overall, guns in the United States are used 80 times more often to prevent crime than they are to take lives. Fact number 10. Only about 3.5% of gun murders in the United States are caused by rifles. Fact number 11. According to Gallup, an all-time record, 74% of all Americans are against a total handgun ban in the United States. Fact number 12. Down in Australia, gun murders increased by about 19% and armed robberies increased by 69% after a gun ban was instituted. Fact number 13. When Piers Morgan claims that there are only 35 gun murders in the UK per year, he isn't exactly being accurate. According to official statistics, there were 59 gun murders in the UK in 2011. Also important to keep in mind that gun crime was already super low even before the gun ban in the UK was instituted, and that a 2009 article in The Telegraph declared that gun crime had double dove the past decade, even though it was widely acknowledged that crime statistics in the UK are massively underreported. Fact number 14. The UK has the 4th highest burglary rate in the European Union. Fact number 15. The UK has the 2nd highest overall crime rate in the European Union. Number 16. In 2009, an article in The Telegraph had a stunning headline, UK is a violent crime capital of Europe. Fact number 17. Despite the very strict gun ban in the UK, the truth is that the UK is far more violent society than the United States is. In one recent year, there were 2,034 violent crimes per every 100,000 people in the UK. In the United States, there were only 466 violent crimes per 100,000 people. Same year. Do we really want to be more like the UK? Fact number 18. According to Gun Owners of America, the governments of the world slaughtered more than 170 million of their own people during the 20th century. The vast majority of those people had been disarmed by their own governments prior to being slaughtered. Those are some sobering statistics that you need to keep in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, Piers Morgan is just another British twit hosting another show on CNN. If we're going to continue to give him credibility in this debate, we're going to have to start bringing forth people that are going to bring credible information and facts and statistics that actually equate to reality. Otherwise, we just need to ignore him. So that's it for tonight's show. Thanks for listening. Hopefully, you'll be back again soon. Thanks.